Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 292, I chat with audio coordinator Mike Abbott about the audio at the Grammy Award show, so stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com. Hi, everybody. It's time for our annual audience survey. We'd really like to hear from you. It helps us understand our audience better, know what you like and don't like, how you listen to the show. It also helps us tell advertisers what kind of people listen. But I promise you, your feedback is always kept personally anonymous. All you have to do is visit twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. It'll just take a few minutes, and it'll help us make Twit even better. We really appreciate your support and any help you can give us. twit.tv/survey.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded February 18th, 2016. Episode 292, Audio at the Grammys. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Drobo, a family of safe and expandable, yet simple-to-use storage arrays. Drobos are designed to protect your important data forever. Visit drobo.com/twit and use the code TWIT100 to save $100 off a Drobo Mini, Drobo 4-Bay, or Drobo 5N. And by the Ring Video Doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your home. Right now, get free expedited FedEx shipping when you go to ring.com/HTG. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the Home Theater Geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week's guest geek is Michael Abbott, the audio coordinator for the Grammys Award show, which was just on CBS last Monday. I'm really looking forward to talking to you, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So nice of you to be here, and I hope you're getting a little rest after that, what must have been quite the strenuous adventure, huh?
Rest is for those later on. We've moved on to other projects, and yeah, it's a long week there on site, and I've got a bit of a cough, so bear with me. I'll try not to cough into the microphone, but yeah, we're moving on to other projects.
Moving on to other projects. Okay, well, we're going to talk about the Grammys here. Before we get started, I want to make sure everybody knows who, those of you who are watching on the live stream at live.twit.tv and logged into the chat room there, or at irc.twit.tv, can post questions as we go, and I'll pass along as many as I can. Be sure to use my screen name in the chat room, by the way, Scott Wilkinson, all one word, no dots or dashes. That puts it in a different color on my screen, and my eye gets drawn to it more easily. I wanted to start, Michael, with asking, how long have you been working on the Grammy show? It's been a while, hasn't it?
This is my 30th year.
Holy smokes! Yeah,
I've done what I do currently as audio coordinator for about 17 years, and prior to that, I was the monitor mixer. Back in the day when there was a single monitor mixer and a single individual mixing monitors. Now there's 6 guys, 3 each stage, plus stagehands that mix the monitors for our AV stages. So I started at the bottom of, so to speak, the food chain in audio, and worked my way up to this.
Mm-hmm. And you've been doing this for 17 years, you said, which is quite remarkable.
Yeah.
So how has the technology, the audio technology in particular, technical aspects of the audio changed over those 30 years?
Well, back in the day, it was strictly analog. We're now into all types of data protocol, MADI, AES, fiber. The show still roughly is analog. It goes into an analog split, and it's delivered and distributed to the various head amps. The music mix head amps for M3, which are Grace preamps. The production video truck Denali Summit, which uses the Hydra Apollo CalRec platform. And then our monitor mix on each stage, A, B stage, our front of house music mix, and our front of house production mix. Those are all digital consoles. And they split into, I believe the front of house uses provides the head amp control for the vocal mics and the production mics, and the split stages A and B provide the head amp control for all the instrumentation, respectively.
Mm-hmm. It's a gigantic undertaking. I've got a few specs here that there's you're using 3 megawatts of power, 2 megawatts for the lighting and 1 for the tech. I think I saw something on the order of 400 microphones or something like that. I mean, it's massive.
It's a pretty big undertaking annually. There's a lot of shows, the Country Music Awards, the Academy Awards, the Tonys. In terms of sheer music, broad interest, I think the Grammys is probably the biggest of its type. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a challenge. There's 60 people, 60 engineers, 60 techs on the show devoted to audio. And it's the blessing is that it's the same crew for the most part, at least for me, plus minus a few people for the past 17 years. And all these folks, year round work on a lot of musical shows, so their specialty is music. So what we try to do is we go in the first day of ESU, which is the everybody sets up period. 5 days before the show, we go into a large meeting, and I download what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks, information with stage plots, input list, mics assigned, and the rundown. And we go through the entire show, sequencing how we're doing segues from one performance with an intro into another performance. And there's a lot of thought of given which stage is assigned what. We have a third stage that we use a lot nowadays called the dish, that we call the dish, which is a type of a bridge stage for performances so that we can be setting up the A and B stages during these performances.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you have 2 actual stages on the main stage that can be set and struck separately, and while one group is performing on one of them, you can be setting up the next one, and back and forth and so on, and then you have this third one, which is kind of a circular stage, kind of out in the middle of the audience, which is really quite interesting. I wanted to ask you about how long it takes to prepare for the show, and you just started to talk about that. But I'm also interested in, sort of how you get things in and out, the rehearsals and all that stuff. I took some pictures backstage when I was there a week before last. For example, I have one of underneath the stage, which it indicates, just how much of a rabbit warren it is down there. Look at that. I mean, you got cables running everywhere. You got people under there doing all sorts of things. I mean, this is underneath the actual stage. Right over the head is where the performances are taking place. So I just would love to hear your sense of, or your description of kind of how things go during this week of preparation. I mean, it takes at least a week to set it up, right? To actually build all the stuff.
Yeah. We have our first day on site, which was last Monday, and that's the install after they've been rigging all the lighting and scenic elements. Couple days before, 3 days before that, if you walked into the arena, it looked like a chain forest. You couldn't see the bleachers behind all the chains. I don't want to. I think there's 300-400 chain motors, half-ton motors that hang all the elements for scenic lighting and sound. We come in on last Monday. We did a pre-hang. I started getting my ducks in a row in my office. The next day, we do what is known as a pre-cable. And there's a mold schedule that's given to the 3 A2s and 4 Local 33 stagehands. And they run all the cables between all the different mix positions that they're responsible for. And then Audio-Tech, our sound vendor, they also have cables that they run between all their mix positions. With the advent of the Digico being used, a lot of those multi-pairs that we used to run are now fiber and coax cables. It really, it speeds up the process. It doesn't mean we need less time. It just, the data management, is I keep referring to, is made easier by these runs.
Mm-hmm.
On this year we
Digico,
had
pardon me for interrupting. By Digico, you mean digital consoles? Is that a generic term?
No, Digico is the manufacturer. It's a Group 1 holding company that actually they manufacture CalRac consoles, which are about 90% of the video trucks in the U.S. They manufacture Allen and Heath consoles, and they manufacture the Digico consoles, which is based out of England. Mm-hmm. And all the consoles in the house are all Digicos. So on Wednesday, everybody shows up, and we have what is known as ESU, equipment setup. That entire day is all the mixers, all the engineers, all the stagehands, all the comms, everybody is setting up. So that on Friday, we start our first day of rehearsals. We work from roughly 9 to 10 o'clock for the next 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, going through all the different 20-plus acts. And in addition to that, we're rehearsing all the production elements, which is the presentations, the awards, what have you. We do satellite checks with the remotes. This year we had Hamilton and Broadway on the Richard Rogers Theater, and we had their presentation, which was another music mix mobile truck, and all mobile video truck for the cameras. And they had was
that in New York, you mean? That
was in New York. That was in New York on Broadway at the Richard Rogers Theater. And they had when they showed up on show day, one day early in the morning to set up 12 cameras, and we took 2 Maddie streams off their Digico racks, their console racks, straight into the Music Mix mobile truck Voyager via Maddie fiber.
And by the way, Maddie is a digital audio interface. I guess it stands for multi-channel
audio digital interface, I believe.
Okay.
Don't ask me MIDI. I know MIDI.
I know MIDI very well. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's a data protocol that a lot of the facilities and trucks and consoles use nowadays instead of multi-pairs. But we, using a pair of direct-out SRC boxes, we were able to do sample rate conversion because they operated at 96K. And as you may or may not know, television operates at a 48K sampling rate. So what we did with the Hamilton group is we worked very closely with their sound designer Nevin Steinberg and their crew, their mix crew, and they provided us tracks in advance, so we were able to go and set up this musical number. As you can imagine, a lot of changes and a lot of vocals and a lot of principals working on this song. And Jay Ficari was able to set up a mix and be able to manage this on the fly when he showed up because he already had laid out his mix basis. And then we rehearsed, I think, 2 or 3 times with the ensemble, did our dress rehearsal, and did the show. So of all the people, he had probably one of the biggest challenges, albeit a single challenge, but nonetheless, it was a very complex number to bring about in such a short amount of time with one day. And that's a lot of pre-production on everybody's behalf going into it. So that when we show up, they had probably a 5-6 page spreadsheet of all the connectivity that needed to be achieved, and everybody was well briefed in advance. So there was a good game plan going into it, which is what all these productions require. You know, you have to have a structure, and then you have to be able to implement that structure in a timely manner in this day and age, with budgets being what they are. And the amount of connectivity and the size of the shows. The shows really, the complexity of the shows have grown with the multi-performance segments. When I started doing this, we had a Grammy orchestra, 40, 50 piece orchestra that rolled up and down the stage on a band cart at the Shrine Auditorium or Radio City Music Hall. In some years, we even had a Grammy Jazz Orchestra, which was on another big cart that rolled in and out. Now it's just a lot of bands that grow in size, to large string sections, to multi-track playbacks, which is what we call track augmentation, which is basically, it's an essential part of any performance nowadays, because the attempt to recreate what the album does can't be done with just some single players on the stage.
Isn't that interesting that the one goal is to recreate the album? In the early days of recording, it was more that the album was going to recreate the live performance, but it's kind of switched, hasn't it?
Well, when you have an act that's gone and produced a recording, an album, as it is, and spent many, many weeks, if not months, if not years, there's a lot of embellishments on that recording that, if not recreated, doesn't reproduce the basis of that song or that track.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people poo-poo the fact that there's Pro Tools used in recording nowadays. It's a necessary evil. The Beatles to now, the Beatles, they kind of fudged a little with bouncing tracks. In my mind, there's nothing different.
It's just more sophisticated and digital now, and you can bounce things without loss.
Yes.
So how many, this was a question I was going to ask you, how many, what would you say the percentage is of live performance to pre-recorded tracks, or track augmentation, as you call it?
Yeah, it's not, we call it live with tracks, and everything's live. We got into a bit of an issue many years ago with the Milli Vanilli, and
yes, I remember that.
The agenda has always been since then to be live, and we get every now and then somebody wants to, for whatever reason, I apologize, for whatever reason, to have vocals on their tracks, and we just don't go down that road, simply put. I would say it's probably about 40–50% of the acts use some kind of augmentation for instrumentations, string sections. When you go with live strings, the chances are, when you got 20 strings out there and you're using clip-on mics, you'll get a musician breathing on a mic will fall off. Even when we have tracks with strings, we still mic up the strings so that we have the option to make it fuller, and the intent is to make it as rich and robust as we can. But again, you're setting these acts in about 5 minutes, and these risers come together, and the musicians come out there and they strap on their mics, and things happen, as we all know.
As we all know, that's right. Well, one of the things I must say that I really love to watch the Grammy show, because it's live. It's mostly people actually singing, and you're going to run into some problems in that case, as we saw last Monday. One of the interesting things, you said there's about 5 minutes to set up each stage for each performance, and one of the things I found very interesting was when I was walking around backstage, you've got a lot of preset things, like, say, 4 backup vocalists, or a keyboard station, or a drum station. I have a picture of instrument platforms that were backstage waiting to be rolled in and out to the show, and there it is in the backstage of the Staples Center. And that, those are all basically set up, all cabled, and I guess you just have a cable access point that you can just plug 1 or 2 easy things into it, and boom, you're connected to the audio system, right?
Yeah, well, it's a matrix, cable matrix, and what you see there is all the sub cables going into a central box, or a sub box, a W2 Whirlwind box that Audio Tech provides, and 4 pair mults with multi-connectors on them. There's an AC cable that goes to the distro cable, and all these carts have to go in a certain order. You don't put the drums in at first. You put everything on one side of the stage, left or right keyboards, and then the drums come in, and then we're able to put the boxes in. But what a lot of people don't understand is there's a lot of scenic elements, there's a lot of lighting elements, And we're literally, audio is the last element that gets finally patched in this 5-minute sequence. And there's two assists that patch all these cables with another 2 fellows that help them. And it's one person on an intercom going to the music mix in the front of house and the monitor consoles, communicating mics and faxing out the mics. And, you know, if there's a problem with, say, a kick drum, we move on so that we know that it's not just the kick drum, or maybe it's the entire molt that needs to be reseated. There's just so many variables that are going on there.
Oh, man.
And like I said, these guys, they've been doing this for a long time. And a lot of years and a lot of shows under our belts. And there's a methodical manner in which we set these things up. And when you run into a problem, it's crisis management, as we all know, how you deal with it. And
how you deal
it's
with
just
crises,
just not one person that's sitting there pushing a fader up. It's multiple people.
Before we move on, I had one other photo that I kind of liked, which was a bunch of guitars in, I believe it was your office where we met. We actually met backstage. And this is just so cool to see all these guitars just ready to go. I guess they're in kind of carrying kind of a case at this point. They'll get preset from this point, but there were a lot of instruments up there on that stage.
Yeah, there was about 7 of those. There's 3 right there fully loaded, but there's about 7 of those inside the room. And those are pictures of art. You know, those guitars they're beautiful pieces of equipment. We had one artist that insisted on having a left-handed acoustic guitar delivered, and one of the guitar vendors delivered that and brought it to the show. And that particular artist smashed it on the stage, and it was a vintage guitar from the 20s.
Oh my God! Oh no!
Yeah, it's.
I saw that. I saw him. I forget who it was who smashed the guitar.
Yeah,
okay,
it's sad. It's sad.
Somebody smashed the guitar, and I went, "Oh man, that must have been a beater guitar," is what I was thinking at the time. But it was an actual classic guitar. Oh man.
Yeah. It's these things happen, but yeah, it's the company that provides all the backline instrumentation is Center Staging. They have the rehearsal studios where a lot of the artists go to rehearse the bits that they play in the show before the show. So there's a whole nother infrastructure of personnel and hardware, audio and video, or audio and instrumentation at Center Staging. And with these mashups that they do, these mixing of 2 different artists or 2 different groups, that requires an offsite rehearsal to get the sequencing and the arrangements and working out all the vocal parts and what have you. And there's a whole nother B unit of production people that work on that, you know, script, the lyric changes, because the director, he's got every verse as a camera shot, literally, with an AD that's calling out those upcoming beats that they take the cuts to or they do special effects with. I think one of the most profound performances was the Kendrick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Kendrick Lamar, amazing.
There's three shots from 3 different angles of his tight face that the director was taking, and it was pretty amazing.
And they switched back and forth really fast.
Yeah, well, the gentleman that's the technical director, Eric Becker, is a musician, and what he does is he has music sheets in front of him with the score, and he's cutting to the measures via the beats of the music, which everybody does, but the uniqueness on his behalf is he is a musician, and that's how he does his script, as opposed to a printed word lyrics.
Wow.
Different approach.
Different approach, but really cool and informed, deeply informed, because it's music based. Well, listen, next up, I want to talk with you sort of about the signal path, the signal flow. But before we do, I'd like to take a moment to thank one of our 2 sponsors for this episode, which is Drobo. Now, as everybody knows, digital data is essential to our lives. Drobo is the safe, simple, and expandable solution for all of your storage needs. Drobo offers a family of external storage arrays. You can either add your own drives or order them preloaded with storage. Drobo's 5N is perfect for network-attached storage as a media server, file server, or backup solution. It's easy to use. Just plug it into your switch or router and you're ready to go. Apps let you back up data to 2 different cloud service providers or sync via BitTorrent Sync. It also works with Plex on the new Apple TV, which is mighty cool. Photographers should check out the Drobo Mini and the Drobo 5D. The Mini is lightweight and portable at just over 2 pounds. 4 drive bays give you up to 8 terabytes of storage. The 5D, on the other hand, is a desktop unit with space for 5 3.5-inch drives and a maximum capacity of 64 terabytes. Both have an optional mSATA SSD acceleration bay, which accelerates small file reads. This is especially useful with image library software like Adobe Lightroom or Apple Photos, as well as its predecessors, Aperture and iPhoto. Now, I have a Drobo 5N here at my house, and I'm using it as a music server for a Sonos system. And I've got it loaded with my entire iTunes library, and it's just able to play out to all the different Sonos devices throughout my house. And I can play the same thing on all of them or different things on each of them in different rooms. Very convenient, very cool, super easy to set up. It was no trouble whatsoever. Drobos are reliable. Data received by your Drobo and not yet written to disk is protected if there's a sudden power loss. Even better, Drobos have an internal eUSB device where data is copied if there's a power failure to protect against long outages. They're also expandable. Add or replace drives in your Drobo with ease. No tools required, and I can certainly attest to that. Beyond RAID technology lets you expand on the fly and mix and match drives. They're simple. Colored lights on the front of the Drobo communicate status. And they're fast. Drobo supports Thunderbolt, Gigabit, and USB 3.0 connections. Of course, the connection varies a bit per model. Visit drobo.com/twit to learn more and check out their complete line of products. And when you use the code TWIT100, you'll save $100 off the purchase of a Drobo Mini, Drobo 4-Bay, or Drobo 5N. That's drobo.com/twit. and use the code TWIT100. We thank Drobo very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. So, Michael Abbott, audio coordinator for the Grammys and other shows as well. You work on a lot of other shows, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I'd love for you to describe for me the signal path, more or less, from the stage to someone's home. And I have some photos that might be able to help illustrate this. But it goes through a bunch of different stages, doesn't it?
Yes. You hear me? Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we use for the analog paths Whirlwind W4s for the main stages between A and B stage. That goes into a ATK proprietary audio line level splitter. It's a 4-way split that provides the splits to, as I mentioned earlier, the Digico stage racks for the front of house, all the in-house hardware. It goes into the Grace preamps for the Music Mix Mobile, and then it goes into the Hydra boxes for the CalRack consoles for the production truck. At going along the broadcast chain. I'm sorry.
Hang on a second. I have a picture of an audio station that I wasn't quite sure what it was. If we put it up here, you can see, and you can tell us where this is in that chain.
That is the hub of the show for audio. What you've got there is the A and B stages. You've got the production mics. Each of those 5 splitters are 56 pairs. And what will happen is we have a lot of submults that come from the dish, downstage thrust, specialized places, locations within the stage where they do intros and tosses to commercials and what have you. And what we try to do is not hot patch things, but inevitably there is some cross patching that occurs. So those 5 splitters on the bottom are all the splits that fan out to the various Digico, CalRack, M3 preamps. The top 3 pieces in the middle there, those are the CalRack Hydra boxes, and those all go to the Summit Denali truck that provides all the production mixing. What's not shown there is a Grace Preamps workstation right behind there where a gentleman sets levels of performances as the preamps then feed up to the M3 trucks via MADI fiber. When it gets up to the M3 trucks, there's 2 trucks up there. We have our main broadcast truck. There's one of the 2, Eclipse and Horizon. And what they are is they're identical platforms in the interior, also the exterior. This year, for the first time, they had Lavo consoles put in that they were mixing on.
And we have a picture of that. There it is.
There you go. There you go. What they do is we'll take one truck, and that will receive the actual performance, and they'll be mixing the performance on. At the point when the rehearsal is finished, they will take the snapshot of that console, that scene, take it to the B truck, and they'll load it in there. They'll call up the Pro Tools record of that rehearsal segment, and they'll refine the mix with the mix engineers from the artist. Then they'll return that mix, the console platform snapshot, back to the main truck and put that in a snapshot scene library where they'll recall the mixes as we go through the dress rehearsal. Those mixes are then fed down 5.1, down the fiber and AES and analog as a backup, down to Summit, which then Summit, Tom Holmes, the production mixer, composites audience mics. He handles all the production aspects, LL Cool, announces. We have an offstage announcer. The pop-up mics, the Shep's pop-up mics, where they do the awards and the acceptances, and also the audience reactions. He's got, I believe, somewhere between 12 to 18 audience mics in the audience for reactions from the audience. And
I think I have a picture of the audio broadcast room, which is, I think, the room you're talking about. We're going to skip a couple of photos. Here it is.
Yeah, that's Summit's audio booth. That's an Alpha. I'm sorry, that's an Apollo console. That's fairly new in that truck as well. This year we are fortunate to have some new consoles for our broadcast. Very powerful platform, that, and basically it's almost virtual in terms of the amount of I/O it has. I won't quote the I/O, but it's over 1600 by 1600.
Wow.
Input and output sources.
Yeah.
And again, inside the truck, MADI is the go-to path for the various signals being routed through the truck to transmission, to tape machines, to EVS playouts. Right there, if you hold that framing on the top right, that little credenza with the panels with buttons, that is the Evertz router, which we typically, what we'll do is we'll assign sources to those router destinations, and that way people within the truck can call up a click track or an EVS playout machine or any number of elements. And there's gentlemen that just are in the B unit of our 2 trucks there that are doing nothing but programming all that connectivity. So it's thousands and thousands of IP addresses.
Wow. I saw in the some of the stats that I got that there were over 400 microphones used altogether. I mean, that's
I would say it's at least 400 mic sources and or line level DIs, direct boxes. Yeah. The average is probably 24 to 30 times 20, so maybe that's 600. It for me, it changes every day. I send out at the top of the day, I send out revisions that the creative process forces as we come, when the artists are, before they get on site, they send us their tech details and I publish them and put them into a book. But as the day before they get there, maybe it changes 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And my job is to keep it all up to sync, up to what it currently is, and download to the 40, 50 people that need this information in a timely manner, because we're on a very tight schedule for production rehearsals.
Yeah. What about wireless? You see an awful lot of wireless mics up there, and there must be, I think the stats I read said something like a couple hundred wireless channels, not only for microphones, but also for wireless in-ear monitors and so on. I mean, how do you manage all that RF traffic? That must be a challenge just in and of itself.
Well, we're lucky to have a company here in Los Angeles called Soundtronics, and David Bellamy and his son Jason are the two principals with the company, along with the staff that comes on the show. And I work with Dave in advance of the show. We've been using pretty much the same structure of number of microphones. We're at, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 48 plus, maybe 50 microphones that are RF. And those are split amongst Audio-Technica's frequencies, Sennheiser's, Shure's U-Series, and the Accent series. And then this year we also had the Sennheiser 9K, 9000 series for a couple acts.
And those all use different frequencies?
Well, they have to by
they
nature.
Have to, obviously,
and then
right.
we also have intercom, which is another 300 frequencies. I don't have that number off the top of my head,
but it's a lot.
and you know, now we're getting into aerial video systems, which provide Steadicams, RF Steadicams, which work in the I think it's 5.1 gigahertz. We also have I'm sorry, maybe 2.6. I'm quoting off the, you know, some of these frequencies shift between the different venues. We also had CBS BehindTheScenes.com using a wireless system at 5.1, and Lady Gaga had 5.2 with her Intel technology that she brought in. You also have Wi-Fi. A couple of years ago, we had an act that was using Wi-Fi for telemetry for their rigging, and they didn't mention it to anybody. And 8 o'clock, they came into my office and said, "Our rigging isn't working." And I said, "Audio," and they went, "We know, but we don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." And they explained what they were using, and what had happened is Verizon, who provides the wireless repeater in the room, at 8 o'clock they fire that unit up and it's suppressed. It's like an IED suppressor. It just shut down all the ancillary Wi-Fi in the building. So we were able to get a hold of the Staples IT, had them shut that off at a commercial. The artist Wi-Fi telemetry then worked. We shut it off during the performance and fired it back up. But it kind of I mentioned that because it gives you the idea that across the board with technology and with performance and what, you know, the two disciplines are doing and using, a lot of elements to take into consideration. And when you get into 300-400 frequencies, Soundtronics provides these proprietary Phoenix antenna systems, which they utilize multi-arrays throughout the room, because we don't know where performances are going to take place. We're told that, you know, prepare for anything. So
and plus, if you got a wireless mic and a wireless monitor system, and you're running around, as a lot of these artists did, I can imagine
I left out the wireless EMs, and there's wireless instruments. We have acoustic guitars that are wireless out of the dish. Yep. So it's a matrix that I put together with Dave Bellamy and his team, and Steve Anderson, the gentleman that was in that photo by the split racks. We all work together in scheduling microphones so that we're able to have, let's just say in the number of 32 performance mics, we stagger them throughout the show by the hour so that there's no overlaps within an hour of the body of the show. No two frequencies get used twice.
That's interesting. That's a very good way to do it. Yeah.
It's the only way we can do it. It's by necessity. But
it requires a lot of pre-planning, though, to make sure that you don't get a collision.
It's the entire show is, you know, when we do these sequences with two performances, sometimes I inadvertently overlap inputs on a single split system. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to reassign those inputs so they don't overlap between a performance. But not only that, the mixers have to build DCAs or faders, master fader scenes, between these two performances so that they can segue within one snapshot. It's a lot of attention to detail. And like I said previously, you know, all these guys have been doing this for several years. and we've got the machinations down, but it's constantly a sliding dynamic scenario that up to a couple of days before the show, they flip-flop 2 acts performances into different slugs in the schedule, the rundown.
Boy, no kidding. And not to mention this year, Rihanna had to bail on her performance at the last minute because she was sick.
Yeah, yeah.
So that threw a monkey wrench into the works for you, didn't it?
It was a last-second scramble. A lot of people listening to the director detail by voice instead of a rundown what we're going to do, the scenario. Yeah, it's fly by the seat of your pants and staying calm and not reacting. Just, you know, having a good plan is the only way you can take on one of these projects.
Yeah. Let me finish up with the signal path. I got a couple more photos to show, and you can tell us where we're at. I have the main control room, which I think is one of the last places the signal passes through, right?
Well, it's the audio and the video are all passing to a single point, and that's in the transmission, which is the B unit of that truck you're showing. At the back there, at the back of the room, or the far left-hand side is the audio booth that's adjacent to this control room. But those 2 signals are all muxed together, and they're embedded into, for transmission, a phase-aligned embedded 5.1 native signal. It's a discrete signal that's sent as a single path with the audio and video muxed together. We don't use metadata with the audio. It basically goes to New York, where it's de-embedded, and actually the transmission path is wide-ranging. There's a path that goes to Television City and at CBS down in LA, off of Fairfax and Beverly, by fiber. There's a signal that goes fiber directly to New York. There's some uplinks paths. There's
satellite uplink. So there's a picture of the satellite uplink.
That's one of I think 3 satellite trucks that are there on site. There's the international feed, which is also satellite. There's even a telephone, which is a catastrophic backup in case there were failure across the board of a signal. So at least
you could send the whole thing over telephone wire.
It's hard to believe that we still use telephone, but they send audio at least as an emergency backup.
So you have tons of redundancy. You've got satellite, you've got fiber going different places, you've got the telephone. So yeah, you're prepared for just about anything. How does the broadcast mix differ from the front of house mix?
Well, the broadcast mix is 5.1. It does and doesn't. It has elements that the PA mix, the front of house mix, doesn't have. Audience reaction mics. We even have a little supplemental audience mixer that adds some beds of audience just for transitions in and out of commercials. It's a 5.1, and that entails with the dialogue and the vocals in a certain place in the sound field, versus the PA mix to matrix to the sound system, which there's main clusters in the front. There's that's a picture of the music mix console, and to the left of that is the production mix console. What those they do is,
and those are in the auditorium.
Yeah, the back of the house left. The production is sent. It composites everything, the music and all the VOs and the announces and the audio tape playbacks and what have you. And that sends it out to a matrix to various zones of the PA. And they send stems of vocals only, instruments only, dialogue, music playbacks. And what that allows is for an even balance wherever you are in the room of the arena. And there's probably, I would say, easily 10, 12 zones of coverage that's different matrix buses, which allows for very even response. You know, if you're standing right in front of the stage, we even have front field speakers right near field for the front row audience so that they hear things, because what you don't want to do is enter in a lot of energy into the room trying to get coverage from single point clusters. And this is a common practice in large arenas. rock and roll tours don't necessarily use this technology or this application. It's cost prohibitive. You know, in a day they have to set up X amount of time to set up, sound check, do the performance, and take and put it back in the truck. We have the luxury or the ideal application where, you know, everybody wants to hear the show as best as it can be or mixed. And television does this type of application pretty widespread in a lot of the venues we work in Los Angeles and across the country.
Barfel in the chat room is asking, how do you avoid feedback when these mics are moving all over the place?
Well, they tune the room. First off, there's a whole couple hours dedicated. We've been in this room many years now, almost 15, and the sound system design is basically the same, plus or minus some zones of coverage. Feedback is an issue with lecterns or stand mics or presenter stand mics, because you get two people, if one's standing too close and one's standing off axis, the differential, and then their type of voice, one has good projection and the other one's soft spoken. That's always a challenge to the mixer, Michael Stewart, to match those levels. So the apparent level to the person in the audience hearing, they're hearing the same level and the same tonality and the same quality. But, you know, everybody knows how much they can push a fader, and feedback typically doesn't occur. We pride ourselves, hopefully, on, knock on wood, that there's no feedback during these types of shows. It's kind of, in fact, when it does happen, it's like, wow, did that just really happen? And I'm not bragging. It's just there's ways of making this happen. And, you know, trying to turn a Shep's mic for dialogue up in a room of 18,000 people and everybody hearing it clearly, that's a real talent. There's not a lot of people that can do that. And I dare anybody to try that on their own without the process. And we use Waves plugins, the WNS in particular, for it's like a cedar dynamic noise gate that we put across dialogue like that, just to clean up the reentry from the room coming back into the microphone. So there's lots of little tricks that people use, de-essers, C6, you know, everybody's got different tricks or tools.
Well, this brings up challenges that one faces, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But before we do, I'd like to thank our second sponsor for this episode, which is Ring Video Doorbell. Now, we're all familiar with the sound of a doorbell. It means a package is being delivered or friends are coming over for dinner, but it also is the sound of someone planning to rob you. Over 95% of home break-ins happen during the day, and burglars almost always start by ringing your doorbell to see if someone's home before pillaging your possessions. With Ring Video Doorbell, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. Ring's advanced motion detection alerts you even if someone doesn't ring the doorbell. With Ring Video Doorbell, you can talk to delivery people and keep an eye on your package. If someone tries to mess with it, you'll get an instant alert and HD video of the whole thing. It's like having a neighbor keep an eye on your home 24/7. Now, I take, in my town where I live, they have a email newsletter, and I recently got a notice in the email newsletter that there was a woman stealing packages that had been delivered to people's front doors. Well, I'm feeling very safe about that now, knowing that I can see that just about anywhere. And if there's any motion at my door, even if I'm not home, I get an alert on my smartphone, on my iPhone, and I can see exactly what's going on. And if somebody comes to the door, I can pretend to be home, even if I'm not. It's really, really cool. Now, installing Ring takes only minutes, and it works with either your current wiring or a built-in rechargeable battery that lasts about a year before you have to recharge it via USB. Very simple. So put your mind at ease and protect your home with the Video Doorbell. Time Magazine and USA Today named one of their top 10 gadgets of 2015. Go to ring.com/HTG for free expedited FedEx shipping. That's ring.com/HTG. With Ring, you're always at home. And we thank Ring very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks. Well, let me ask you then the opposite side of that coin, which is, what were some of your favorite audio moments in the show? What went particularly well?
You know, overall, the broadcast that we pulled it off again, albeit not perfectly, but
well, is it ever?
Yeah, you know, this group, I don't participate in the process of winning an Emmy, but since I've been audio coordinating the show, I think the guys that are mixing it, they're up to 11 for best sound.
Wow.
Yeah. The expectations are high, extremely high.
Mm-hmm.
On this particular show, I think what we did with some of the acoustic acts, the Eagles, the Bonnie Raitt, Gary Clark, Chris Stapleton. I'm old school. I'm not a young man anymore. I like the older music. My daughters, they like the newer music. What can I say?
Yeah,
I thought the Kendrick performance was powerful.
Very powerful. Man,
that
bonfire on stage, man, that was like, you know what, 20, 30 feet high of real fire on stage? That must have been a nightmare. Not necessarily for you, but man.
No, it's a fire hazard, and the fire department worked very closely with production on it.
I'll bet.
These things you know, there's a lot of vetting that goes on with these types of performances so that they work. They spend a lot of money. Back in the days when the labels contributed a lot to these shows, scenic elements became immense. I look back on those shows to now we use a lot of video content, and a lot of that video content, going back to the Pro Tools, is triggered by time code. It's this is a application that's used pretty much in Broadway to automate a lot of lighting and effects and audio in Broadway shows. Although Hamilton, I will say, was completely done manually. They do not use any automation, any time code sequencing at all. Which
wow. That was another beautiful moment. That opening show, that opening number from the show Hamilton was just great.
Yeah. No, that was a lot of work. I would say the amount of discussions and emails almost equated the entire show for me, and working out details with everybody involved back there.
Mm-hmm. You know what? One of my other favorite audio moments was, very simple, in fact, was Stevie Wonder and Pentatonics doing a tribute to Maurice White, totally a cappella. Was there any particular challenge to that? It was beautiful. It sounded great.
Well, yeah. We had a few years ago, Keith Urban, Ravi Shankar's daughter, I forget her name, and somebody else sing Jolene around the podium to pop up Shep's mic. And I was able to work with, you know, they were asking for 3 hand mics, as were Pentatonics, and not so much Stevie, but you know, with the beatbox and the bass vocal, we knew they couldn't work around a single mic. And I was approached by their people, the Pentatonics engineer, what if we could do, you know, more mics or just hand mics. And I posed that we try to do this Appalachia style around a single mic, and we tried it at rehearsals, and it didn't work as well as we wanted, and they weren't standing in the right place. It was all about positioning, as you know, when you sing around a single mic. So we ended up going with 3 mics, 2 of our presenter stands, which are deployed via an RF base, and the pop-up mic. And yeah, I mean, again, less is more is prevalent in these types of shows. If you go out there and try to do an a cappella performance with nothing around you, you got nowhere to go other than your talent. Right. And I applaud anybody that tries to carry off something like that. It speaks for itself, as it did previously when that trio did Jolene.
Right. And at the other end of the spectrum, of course, was the Kendrick Lamar thing, which covered the entire stage. And then the Hollywood Vampires, you know, this rock band with Alice Cooper and Johnny Depp and I forget who the other guy was, a famous actor type. And I was thinking, man, the SPLs on that must have been just outrageous.
Well, yes, but we had AC/DC. we had AC/DC last year, and that holds the record, I would say.
Ah, okay. Yes, I can imagine that it would.
In the case of the Vampires, it's all about tone, guitar tone.
Yes, right.
I personally,
distorted guitar tone.
Well, I'm not speaking for anybody other than myself, but Johnny Depp did an honorable showing, and just listen to the tone of Joe Perry to understand what I'm saying. Guy. What I'm saying, it's all about the tone.
Got it. Well, you went from 2-channel or probably even mono in the early days of the Grammys. Now we're at 5.1. Do you think there'll ever come a time when you'll go to an immersive audio system like Atmos or DTSX or something like that? I know we probably have to wait for a broadcast standard to have that in it, like ATSC 3.0. But might that ever happen, you think?
There's a lot of movement to push for that initiative. I personally I've done a mix in Atmos. The algorithms aren't quite there for down mix from an Atmos platform. I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be gone on. I personally, and I could be completely wrong in this, if Comcast and Charter had done the merger, I think the initiative would have been pushed a lot harder and faster and sooner to get immersive audio out there, object-oriented audio. Mm-hmm. It's. I think when it comes out, it's going to be a premium content that you'll pay an extra cost for. I know DirecTV's within the company, they're trying an initiative to see if they can pull this off or put it together. And now with AT&T taking over, you know, it requires the bandwidth, which doesn't exist. There's just so many factors in it. For me, I believe in compelling audio. When I say compelling audio, something that is very subtle and doesn't detract from what the video is on the screen, but, you know, the eye to ear brain, what you're hearing compared to what you're seeing. If we can pull people and engage them, and there's a secondary audio path that I'm able to sit, for instance, if there was a camera on a drum kit and all of a sudden I could switch to that audio. I think there was a DVD that was made by the Stones a few years ago where that was a secondary audio video channel. Mm-hmm. I think it down the road, yes. The big problem I have right now is that 5.1 audio is it's not defined. We have a hard time getting show to show, live shows, continuity, for lack of a better word, between the different broadcasters. I'm surprised to hear you. I'm surprised to hear you say it's not well defined. Well, in all the broadcast specs by the networks, there's no defined where I put the vocal in the sound field. I do shows with all 4 networks, including DirecTV, and nobody has ever told me in a spec, a written spec, where the dialogue needs to be. And that's a big issue that I have personally, and I think a lot of people do. And it hasn't been made a standard, nor should it be.
Well, yeah, wouldn't you, for example, if a character is talking and walking across the screen, wouldn't you pan their dialogue, their voice from one end to the other, follow them as they're walking?
You know, for features or DVDs, which is a single point distribution, and it's played across in a standard format playout, yes. You've got 3,500 head ends at the last count. And a head end, I referred to a local distributor of the signal that's sent out by a single network.
Okay, so like Comcast in LA or
Charter in Van Nuys. You know, there's probably in Los Angeles for Comcast, there's probably 8 to 10 outlets that receive those signals and distribute it to the end user, the home viewer. Then you've got the set-top box, the presets that the home viewers got. You know, people. I've got 3 systems in my house that have surround sound, and they're all calibrated. They're all set up to what I understand is correct format and presets. And I do that so that when I mix something on, in a booth, in a truck, I can go home and listen to different rooms if I'm in a different room and hear the same thing. Not everybody has that luxury. And us as mixers, all we can do is try to be safe and considerate to what we know will get sent home. I've had engineers that come to me and want to put, for a TV broadcast, an entire string section in the surround speakers, and knowing how things get transmitted and how they get muxed and how they get futzed with in the transmission process. I recommended against it, and it turns out that, yeah, there was no strings on that broadcast, even though there were on the screen. So doing a dynamic panning of what you described in 5.1, it's a little dangerous. But at the same time, I've watched a football game on Sunday and then turned on the evening news and the center channel's gone because something isn't switching properly somewhere in the broadcast chain. And to go back, as I've tried to do, and establish where this failure is next to impossible, because this is a real-time situation and there is no forensics to go back and, you know, point to the failure or establish what went wrong. Look at Super Bowls. The pre-show sounded great. The halftime show, there was mixed results. All these fellows that have mixed these shows are friends of mine, and they've all been at one point or another victim of circumstances of the end result. Yeah. So, you know, my approach is to work with my network partner of the broadcast I'm working with, and go to them and say, what works best for your process? I know one network years ago when 5.1 came out used the center channel to, they'd take the 4.0, so to speak, or the 4.1, and they'd change out to a secondary language in the center channel because that's where the dialogue was. And it was a real cheap way of producing international distribution. That doesn't occur anymore, but even within a network, how I do one show and how another show within that same network where the dialogue in the center channel is 2 completely diametrically opposed sound locations or sound fields. So it's not defined, and I think that's a consideration. When you're doing a mix.
Yeah. One last question. I don't know how involved you were with the streaming aspect of the Grammys. We know that the audience for the broadcast was down a little bit, but still in the 25 million range. So that's pretty damn good. But the streaming audience was greater than ever. And in fact, so much so that the stream had some problems because it was just overtaxed. Were you involved much with the audio to the streaming feed, or was that somebody else?
Well, the feed they're getting is a derivation of what we send out to CBS. Where it's picked off and how it's provided, and how it's distributed and processed and what have you, I'm not aware of that because it's such, in my world, it's kind of a new avenue that's ever expanding. And maybe you read the same article I read in the LA Times where there was slightly down from last year in ratings, about 25 million, what have you. But the CBS.com ratings were higher than ever. And at the same time, I was getting pinged during the broadcast with there being problems on the CBS stream. At first, I thought it was the network feed, but again, you're always going to get people that are having problems with their local cable companies, and it's a perceived problem from the origination site at Staples. With regards to the stream, I've not heard, I can't speak effectively, but given the tweets and social media that I heard about it, it's something that I would like to endeavor to work with CBS, our network partner, and see what exactly their transmission was, because I heard comments saying that it sounded like it was just audience mics in the house. It sounded
Yeah, I read that too. Yeah.
I don't know. It's frustrating because I know there was an attempt by an international partner, broadcast partner, to take just our audience mics, and we very easily could have given that to them, but it was the request went away earlier in the week, and to my knowledge, there's nothing but the 5.1 going out to the world. Even stereo isn't sent anywhere nowadays because everything is done in 5.1 streams. So it could have been that the stream took the left front and the right front, which would have no dialogue in it, or it'd be very down in level, and it would sound like audience mics. So, as I said, there's no comprehensive, there's no metadata in our streams with these shows that identify or give watermarks to the streams and what's populated in the streams. And I believe
maybe there should be.
Well, it kind of fell off the table in the HD transition. That was there, and maybe it should be, but nobody takes it. If I do send it on a mix, it falls on the floor once it gets to the network.
Got it.
But again, that's bandwidth and it's signal, and it's ever evolving.
Well, it is a very evolving subject and a moving target, and you've had plenty of experience aiming at that target, and I know you'll do it again in the future, and I'm sure looking forward to it because, as I said, the Grammys are among my very favorite award shows because of all the live energy that's there. That's really great. So I thank you so much for being here and helping us understand the complexities, challenges, and successes of putting on a show such as the Grammys. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Scott, for the opportunity. I enjoyed this time, and I hope it enlightened a few of your viewers to the processes we go through and the challenges. And
well, that's
I can only say it's a passion with me to provide audio that's compelling and is cohesive and as best as we can do in this day and age. That in itself is a challenge.
You bet. You bet. And beautifully taken by yourself and your entire team. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you can find me online at avsforum.com, and you can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott and at avsforum. You can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here at twit.tv/htg. and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit-home-theater-geeks. Next week, my guest geeks, I have several. There are going to be Jeff Tully, Chris Armbruster, and Mike Heiss, who sometimes populates in the chat room. They are now currently at the Hollywood Post Alliance HPA Tech Retreat. And so next week, they're going to come on and tell us about what they learned about the future of Hollywood post-production and technology. Should be a lot of stuff about high dynamic range and all kinds of cool stuff. So I hope you will join me for that. Until then, geek out.